So before I start, I want to specifically say welcome to any trans or queer young folks who are in the audience, and I also want to welcome you to add, critique, subtract from anything I say today, because really you are the experts in your own experience. So Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for having me. Thank you. The Torah portion this week, Shalach Lecha, recounts the story of God instructing Moses to send a representative from each tribe to assess the promised land. The scouting party returns with a full assessment of the land, and their assessment, in true Jewish fashion, is largely critical. In fact, the section recounts that the report was so hopeless that the traveling party wept through the night after hearing it. One can imagine traveling through the desert, exhausted, soaked with heat, to finally get to the promised land, only to discover its promise isn't quite what you expected. It makes sense that what came next was a deep and significant depression. You might even call it despair. As someone in the field of mental health research with a focus on queer and trans young people, that you asked me to speak this week on Shalach Lecha seems to share it. Several weeks ago, I took both of my own children to a No Kings rally in our community, protesting the decisions of the Trump administration that restrict the rights of marginalized people. Before the rally, we did our normal Saturday morning activities. We had our weekly complaining session about Hebrew school, an intergenerational tradition. We reluctantly attended said Hebrew school and services, and then we went and got our weekly lox and bagel from the local deli. I brought poster board and markers for my two kids so they could make the posters while we were eating our breakfast. My eldest, Eloise, who at the time was 12, asked if they could go out to the car and work on their poster in the quiet of my giant mom-mobile. Eloise is creative and politically active, two things I support as their parent, so I said sure. Then they asked for my phone to do research. I was dubious, but eventually I conceded. My younger child and I ate our lox and bagel and made our own signs in the deli, while Eloise labored in the back of my car in the parking space right outside. They emerged 10 minutes later with a sign of the outline of the United States, each state carefully drawn and labeled correctly. 19 of those states had red X's through them, and the heading of the poster read, "The states where I can't go." I'm passing the photo around now. In addition to identifying as a musical theater kid, a nerd, an artist, and a maker, Eloise identifies as gender non-binary and has since they were about 3 years old. The states that were marked with an X all have anti-trans bathroom laws. And that means that children in grades K through 12 are not legally allowed to use the bathroom that best represents their gender. They're forced to use a bathroom that aligns with their assigned sex at birth. This practice is unsafe, both physically and emotionally. It creates an opportunity for bullying and violence when a young person who appears as a particular gender is forced to use a bathroom associated with another gender group. It also sends a message, loud and clear, to trans-identified youth. You are not welcome here, and we are not invested in your safety. As a parent, when I saw the sign, I was stunned into silence. And if you know me, that's pretty unusual. While I knew that Eloise was aware of what was happening nationally, even as a queer person, as a parent, and someone in the field, I didn't realize how it was being metabolized by them. I had no idea that they were carrying this feeling of insecurity on a day-to-day basis. I had no idea that they felt unsafe in half of this country. They carry that feeling quietly on a daily basis, and wow, was that sign a wake-up call to me about the lived impact of being trans in this country today. Eloise is an Israelite who has walked through the desert of bullying, of a world that expects something of them that they could never deliver. And their protest sign was their report of their scouting of the promised land. They were communicating to their community and to the allies, this country that promises all of us freedom It doesn't mean it in these 19 states. We are not welcome here and we are not safe. Like the Israelites wandering through the desert who wept all night after hearing the report of the promised land, trans-identified young people, and in this case their mothers, are weeping. There's an oft-cited statistic about suicide risk in LGBTQ+ young people. LGBTQ+ youth are 4 times more likely than their peers to attempt suicide. And I want everybody to pause for a minute and actually think about that statistic. We're not talking about thinking about suicide. We're not talking about hopelessness. We're talking about being so despondent that they actually follow through an attempt to end their lives. That statistic is alarming. It doesn't reflect something inherently different about queer youth. What it reflects is good scouting. They are scouting their environment, and what they see is making them despondent. They've been promised freedom and opportunity, and as Eloise said to me later, now I can't even travel to most of the places I would like to go. In this kind of environment, what is there to be hopeful for? As a parent, I see Eloise's sign as a question. What are you, Mom, going to do about this scouting report? And so that's my question to all of us today. What are we going to do about this scouting report? So here are some suggestions, which came from primarily young people that I asked and folks at the Trevor Project. Step 1, educate yourself. And any of those of you out there who think you already know everything, I'm talking to you in particular, and I put myself in that group. I'm the parent of a trans kid. I personally identify as queer, and I make mistakes all the time. I might know what it was like to come out at 15 in Phoenix, Arizona, but I don't know what it's like to be a trans young person living in Massachusetts today. I have to listen, and I have to learn, and language and experience evolves every day. So take the initiative to assess what you need to know and make efforts to fill that gap. And don't expect members of that community to be the ones who educate you. It's not their labor to do, and I don't want to subject them to my own ignorance by asking questions. Instead, I go to places where people are paid to train me. Those spaces are created for me to ask uninformed questions in a way that doesn't harm the facilitators. Even as someone who runs a support group for trans parents, I also go to one, because I'm constantly made aware of the ways in which my own biases and my experience in normative society impacts the way I look at the world. I still have my own work to do, and I always will. And make sure that when someone corrects you, because all of us make mistakes and expect it to happen, that you say thank you. Because the person who took the time to correct you showed vulnerability to do so and took energy and time to make that correction. Number 2, do a scouting assessment of your own synagogue. Be thorough and be critical. What you're looking for here is not what you say about whether your synagogue is welcoming, but what a scout will see, what you are showing. Walk through the doors and imagine that you're someone who identifies as a member of the LGBTQ+ community who's likely not been welcomed in other faith communities. What do you see on the walls? Are there pictures of queer people? Are there mentions of LGBTQ+ people in communication materials that aren't just about their sexuality or their gender, but are about who they are as people? Do you offer interpretations of the Torah that draw comparisons not just to Jews, but to other marginalized groups in your weekly discussions? And very importantly, what kind of meaningful connections has your shul made with LGBTQ+ organizations in the region? Not on your terms, but on theirs. How do you show up at other events and not expect people to always come to you? And then once you feel like you've got the basics, as a mental health professional, the statistic I know that I find most important is that it takes one caring adult in a child's life to change the trajectory of that child. And for queer and trans young people, it reduces suicide attempts by 40%. That is not a clinical intervention. It's not a mental health service. It's an adult who takes the time to care, to show up, and to be interested in who they are. And the most important part of this is to be there to support them, not just for their gender identity or their sexuality, but for them as a holistic person. Ask about their education, ask about their friends, get invested in their career or educational goals, use your resources to help support them to reach them. Remember that trans and queer people are not just their gender or sexuality, they are a whole person. And lastly, help the helpers. Sometimes we aren't the best ones equipped to provide the help. So for me in particular, I think about COVID. I was really frustrated that I wasn't a medical provider and that I couldn't do anything to help people directly. And a friend said to me, look toward the inner circle. Who are the helpers who are helping the people and what can you do to help them? And so I volunteered to provide free counseling to first-line medical providers. So what resources do you have that you can offer the helpers? Are there people who are trying to lobby for laws that you can offer tech or writing skills to? Can you as a shul throw a free rest and rejuvenate night for all of the people working directly with queer and trans youth in the community? What other ideas might you have? I read the portion for this week, and I have such empathy for those wanderers. I grew up in the desert, and I know just how hot it can be and how tiring walking in the heat might make you. They were being asked to take a risk to realize a dream for our people. What a burden for them in that moment. Poorly resourced, exhausted and tired, about to give up hope. How could we ever expect them to take that risk for us? But they did, and our people survived as a result. And so do trans and queer young people every day when they walk outside of their houses and into this world. Let's make it one deserving of them. Shabbat shalom.